Welcome to Michael's record collection.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start out by asking you about this. I don't know if you're calling it a project or a band or whatever, Sweet Invention.
Yeah, well, Sweet Invention was a project my wife and I started working on, I don't know, a couple of years ago, really, little by little. And we managed to pull together some songs, which we, decided to release during the pandemic when it first hit. We were just going to wait until we had enough for a full album, but it just seemed like the right time. So yeah, and the idea was I wanted it to be a full project. I really didn't want to be the guy doing everything, and you know, but I guess it's a starting point. So hopefully, going forward with that project, it would be nice to have an actual guitar player and keyboard player and drummer on board. So
So, what can you tell me about the instrumentation? Well, first of all, did you guys write the songs together?
yeah, so a lot of the music. Well, both, yeah, because I had a couple of things that I had music for a long time. Um, and then when she started, I had her plug in some vocal lines that were just the usual, yeah, la di das,
Hmm.
pretending you're singing words kind of thing, like Neil always does.
Right.
But the idea is just to hear what a voice is going to sound like and, try to flesh out the melodies. And then the words sort of come with that. And so yeah, we fleshed them out that way. Once we got some lyrics, then we began to understand more of the form of the song. Uh, and then there was one track called Teacher, which she had this fretless bass part with an ostinato keyboard piano line, and she sang over those. And that's what we started with. And then I sort of fleshed it out from there. And then we had a full song. And then same thing with the instrumental piece. She plays guitar on like the first half, and then I sort of take over in the second half. So yeah, it was definitely a collaboration. And then I had Scott Connor, who has been in my Genesis and Steve Hackett tributes. Um, he tracked drums for us.
Okay. So, everything else that we hear is you and your wife?
Yeah, I did all the keyboards and I did all the guitar, except for, like I said, I think she did the first half of the lead stuff in the song called Poor Mr. Weasley. And then she also did the ostinato piano thing in Teacher, just, like the very opening figure. She wanted to play that. So she played a little bit, but mostly it was, building the vocal parts and whatnot.
Randy, was there any particular vibe or theme you were going for in the music for Sweet Invention?
Well, vibe, I guess, would be just in general, just something that was vibey, something that was a little more than, I know, a little less predictable, something that maybe, would appeal to the more, to a prog audience with some kind of pop sensibility, I guess, which is kind of what we do in the Neal Morse Band. So,
Hmm.
it's to me, it's always been the best balance when it comes to songwriting with vocals and stuff.
Hmm.
So
So,
it's unfortunately very me in a lot of respects. I can't get away from myself. That's why I really wanted a whole band to do this.
right. So I heard it on Spotify. I believe it's also on Waterfall on
Oh yeah,
Neal's app. Where can people buy this?
anywhere you download music,
Okay.
iTunes, Amazon.
Is it digital only then? They can't get a disc?
Yeah, it is. It being is that it was an EP. Uh, yeah, it's digital only.
Okay.
It would take a real demand to turn it into product. So to a physical product. Uh, and I think it would be better to wait till we had a full album. And I don't know. It's a test. You have to put it out there and see what the climate is like for it,
Hmm.
what people think, and it's got its audience and whatnot. So we hopefully will write more stuff coming up.
Okay. Would you want to put these 4 songs together with some more and turning it into an album? Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think ultimately what I'd really like to see happen is, like I said, to get a proper guitar player and a keyboard player on board, maybe revamp some of the existing material, as well as um, just have other people to write with in the process, so it has more of a band sound. I really wanted a band sound in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
you and your wife have been doing some live dates, some Mr. and Mrs. George live dates
yeah,
in the area.
yeah, the Arizona is one of those places where there's a lot of it, and we figured, I knew that nobody around here would do kind of what we're doing. My idea was to choose the kind of songs that are, every bit as popular as what you do here, but you never hear anybody do them. So I think we take a little more of a bit of a professional concert approach to creating the arrangements of these songs, but we just go out and play them like any other acoustic duo. So I think people are a bit taken aback by what they hear at first, because it probably sounds a little more polished than what they're used to hearing people do. It doesn't, quite have that same loose quality that a single person with an acoustic guitar might give it. Because there's 2 of us, we're able to actually do parts, that work together.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Like, if you have one guitar playing the bass line in some songs, it's amazing what a difference it makes. It creates motion, it carries the song better. So, but it's really mostly the songs we chose, which were quite, just different than what you would expect to hear around here from people, but nonetheless, every bit as well known and cherished, test of time songs.
Mm-hmm. Do you also put some of your Sweet Invention stuff in there when you play out?
What we have from time to time, yeah, we have adapted a couple of those songs to just the 2 of us on acoustic guitar. We've probably done more of that in some of the streaming concerts we did last year, but we've actually played out with some of those songs as well. People, they enjoy it. You tell them, "Oh, this is original." You play it. "Oh, that's nice." Da 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 da.
Oh, good.
Nobody's gonna really. Yeah, it's not really. You can get away with it to a certain extent, I guess. There'll probably come a point where, if we played it more, people might take more of an interest. I don't know. I tend to think that when you go and play for people and somebody's hiring you to do it, you'd kind of want to make sure you cover the basics first.
Right. Well, I think the songs are great. I think that you're selling yourself a little short, Randy. I think there's a market for it. I think people should go listen to it. Speaking of playing out live though, how has it been in terms of getting gigs where you live with with the pandemic going on and everything?
Well, we've mostly been playing at a restaurant here in Gold Canyon, and that's been really nice because it's 5 minutes from the house, and it's pretty safe here. We take every precaution. The restaurant's doing everything in accordance with the recommendations, and everybody's being as safe as they can. And being as that we're out here in a kind of an isolated area, there's not a lot of traffic that comes in from all over. It's usually local, traffic here in the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't present too much of an issue, really. And it's not like we're really sandwiched in with people or anybody's squished in together. There's plenty of social distancing going on. The restaurant's laid out so that people aren't right on top of each other, certainly not on top of us. And just got to take the precautions and be careful. keep our hands washed and lots of hand sanitizer.
Yeah. So with the audience further back, is it you know, are you finding you're getting a little bit different kind of feedback from the audience when you play live?
No, the place isn't so big that they're, you know, that they're out of conversation range. Well, at least half the place is within conversation range. The other half, you know, they'll seat larger parties sometimes where people will tend to talk more. So they're off in the distance a little bit. No, it's usually pretty cool. You know, we get lots of feedback. You can see people. You can't necessarily always hear them, but you can certainly see them. You start playing a song, somebody will get up, turn around, and stare at you for a minute. You know, like they're surprised that they're hearing this song, and that's exactly what it is. Because then I mean, you can see them talking to each other, and it's having the effect that I intended it to have. That was the whole idea. It's for people to just go like, "Oh, I can't believe they're doing this song. I love this song."
Yeah.
Nobody ever does it, you
know. What are some of the songs that you've chosen to play at your live dates?
Well, you know, as an acoustic duo, I wanted to stick with the stuff that I grew up with. So 60s, 70s, 80s, top 40, basically. However, you know, we will try to choose the songs we like. At least we started out that way. Started out, we'll choose what we like. Like we do some Monkeys, so we do like Pleasant Valley Sunday, I'm a Believer, which isn't probably as big of a stretch. But we also turn around and do things like Hello, It's Me by Todd Rundgren, or then we might switch gears and do Synchronicity 2 by The Police.
Oh, nice.
King of Pain, or you know, Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears. Everybody Wants to Rule the World. That's always a good one. Yeah. And I've incorporated looping into a lot of it too, you know, so I can just kind of create little percussion loops by banging on the guitar. Songs like Lime in the Coconut, Gentle on My Mind. You know, it's a range. It's just a wide range.
Yeah.
You know, from Carpenters to, you know, to the Monkeys to Peter Gabriel, you know, gosh, you know, Steelers Wheel, Jerry Rafferty. We do songs like Baker Street, on 2 acoustic guitars. So
yeah,
we do Kashmir by Led Zeppelin.
Oh, that must be interesting.
Yeah. Well, and people found it so because it's like it's the last thing they expect to hear from an acoustic duo in Arizona. You expect to hear something folky. You expect to hear something kind of, you know, grassroots rock or country rock, folk. You know, but yeah, you know, here we are jumping around from, you know, Frank Sinatra to Sting, you know. Yeah, and to Bruce Hornsby. So and then we'll throw in some Hollies or you know, stuff like that. The Association. So yeah, it's a lot of songs you just tend. But they're so well. They're all just very very well known, but they never hear people play these songs.
Right.
So
okay.
That's the thing. It's the shock value. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not necessarily deep cuts, but they're not the standards that most people.
They're not deep cuts. They're all hits.
Right.
They're all hits. But yeah, they're just not the typical fare that people would choose to do as an acoustic guitar duo. Yeah. But you see, I think the target audience is that era. So I think that they appreciate it largely because it's like, and people sit there, they come for dinner and stuff, and they'll sit there and listen. They can't leave. It's funny. I've seen people trying to leave for an hour and they can't because every time we play something else they love, or you know, they can't stop. They can't stop watching.
Yeah.
So you know, and that probably just comes more from trying to take a slightly more professional approach to what is a fairly casual gig.
Mm-hmm.
You know, try to present it with some polish and some skill, and yeah, it goes a long ways. You know, people, and we're able to usually accommodate requests by people. Some lady, we played our Neil Diamond song, but then she requested Neil Diamond, And for a minute, I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to tell her we already played the one Neil Diamond song. Then I realized we hadn't done "I'm a Believer" yet, and so I said, "You want Neil Diamond? We're gonna play a Neil Diamond song." I crank into the, "I'm a Believer." Of course, it sounds more like the Monkees version.
Yeah.
But it was written and recorded by Neil Diamond, so
Sure.
Get
2 for 1.
Fun stuff when people ask you for something, you can give it to them. A guy asked us for John Prine a couple weeks ago, and it's like, oh, that's nice that somebody asked for something you actually know. So.
All right. You mentioned, something prog based with more pop sensibilities, and that's something that that's been a staple throughout your career. Your band Agilon put out stuff like that, and the last album from that band, This Good Place, came out in 2009. What is the status of Agilon right now? Is there any chance we'll see another Agilon album?
I don't know. There's really not a definitive answer for that. I left it open-ended, but it requires people coming together with the focus of doing it, and until that's ready to happen, it's unlikely. But I don't know. I still think about, when I can tour again, it'd be nice to go out and do an evening with sort of thing where I can do some of that material, with other material, solo material, and whatever, and bring a group of people who can cover all the stuff. But as far as doing another album, that would require the singer to come forward with something solid, that an idea or whatever that he has of what he thinks we might want to do, or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. If that were to happen, I'd look at it and consider it. I think about it. It's not something I'm really going to go chasing down.
Gotcha. Obviously, you've just been recording with Neal. The new Neal Morse Band album sessions that have taken place. You and Neal have gone back for a while now. You've been playing bass for him for quite a bit. How did you and Neal kind of get into each other's orbits?
Oh, well, I had to insert myself into his path. There's no other way. It happened at a time when, prior to the release of the Testimony album, he was putting together a touring band to take it out. And I got his number from a mutual friend or contact, and I called Neal, and he actually answered, so I got him on the phone, and we chatted for a while. Initially, I think I was trying to get him on the second Agilon album because he did some stuff on that. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to get him involved in putting a track on CPR Volume 1, which was the whole genesis of that series of CDs. The first one, and it was a double, so we had a lot of artists involved. And I thought he should be involved. It's just the kind of thing he should be involved with. So, these are things I sort of called him up to talk to him about, but invariably we started talking about Testimony and where he was at with that. And he's told me he was just praying about who to get. He wasn't really holding auditions. And so he wanted to know what I did. And, I told him a little bit about my experience and what I could offer. And he just, he finally volunteered that, well, what we really need is a bass player. We don't have a bass player. And I think, well, that's a good thing since I'm a bass player. I play guitar and keyboards, and I'll do my best to keep up with whoever. But he really, he said we really need a bass player, and it's like, well, that works for me because I bring the most to the table as a bass player. So he sent me a copy of Testimony, and then I sent him a copy of what I was asking him to do. And subsequently, we had a few more phone conversations, and I think it was important that he found somebody who shared his faith. That was a big part of it too. He wanted somebody who he didn't have to feel like, they were going to have to kind of fall in line with what he believes, even if they didn't. Which is kind of the reason he left Spock's to begin with. He wanted to be able to write Christian themed stuff and not really, worry about how the band members were feeling about playing it or anything. So he wanted people who shared that faith, and it worked out pretty well that way, I think, overall. So, yeah. And so it was just like, well, you'd have to be out here, and I thought, well, okay, I'll just drive out and hang out. So I did. I hung out for 4 months, and during that time, we did some one-off shows up in the Northeast, and we did the Testimony tour. And really, literally the day we got, we took a week off after the tour was over, and he and I both stayed in Southern California, where we went to Disneyland. I took my daughter to Disneyland and stuff, and he and his brothers all brought their kids, and they went to Disneyland. We all went to Disneyland together. So we were there for about a week, and then we flew back to Nashville. I flew back with Neal and Sherry. Literally that day we got back, I just, packed my car up and started heading back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when Neal gave you Testimony, I mean, I know Neal plays basically everything. So did he give you something that was almost like 75% formed, and then you were trying to find your, what would I play on this?
He sent me the final master that was going to be released.
Okay.
Final mixed mastered album, just the copies he got from Rich, and I think there were 2 files. Just two. Initially, these albums are always just one file. There's no track breaks. Track breaks come later after the mix has all been signed off, and when he starts doing the mastering process, then he'll insert the track IDs for an album at that point. And so I had gotten it before any of that had happened. But yeah, I listened to it, and I fell in love with it right away. It just, at the time, it was what I wanted, what I needed, what I'd been praying for. And I guess, he needed somebody who could just listen to it and play it and bring it. And I did. So when I showed up in Nashville, he and Eric Brenton were rehearsing with Mark Leniger on drums. It's just the 3 of them, and they had barely gotten through the first 2 songs. I showed up, and I already had the whole first CD under my hands, and I was pretty well through the second CD as well. But so we played through it, and they were just really impressed. And they're like, we haven't gotten much done, But, it comes slowly. That kind of music, especially if you got guys who aren't used to playing it. And so, he was spoon feeding the stuff to a lot of the guys, this is how this goes. This is what this is. But they were all good musicians. Once they learned it, they didn't have any problem playing it. They just, but it probably took them a little longer to get it under their fingers. It's just not what they're used to. So.
When you guys did the Testimony Live DVD, was that the first DVD you'd played on?
Yeah. That was the first released product that I played on with Neal. Yeah.
So you basically have been on most of his releases, if not all of them, ever since then.
Yeah, I've been on all of them since then.
Yeah.
As far as I pretty much all of the ones that Mike has played on. That are, that fall either under a Neal Morse solo or the Neal Morse Band umbrella.
You and Mike and Neal obviously have a good chemistry together. You've done these cover to cover albums, which you just the third one came out in 2020. And how much fun are those to work on?
Oh, they're a blast. like anything, you know, you're playing songs you like and you're trying to, you know, make them sound good. A lot of times Mike will take liberties with songs because oh, I think it should be like this, and he'll play it that way. And then it's like, okay, so my first inclination is to play it like it goes exactly, you know.
Right.
Oh, he's not playing the same drum patterns. He's playing something different. And so then you have to depart from it and just make it your own kind of thing. Other ones were pretty spot on as far as, you know, how they go and the way we did them. So
And
it can vary. It just depends.
do you choose the songs together? Is there veto
Well, in the
power?
past, well, I mean, it's always comes down to what everybody will agree on.
Yeah.
You know, we throw songs back and forth all the time and have thrown some of the same songs back and forth every time, still haven't done them. This was a little different because of the logistics. Usually we're doing an album, and at the end of an album session, we'll have time and we would do the covers for a bonus disc or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of 2019, Mike went and he tracked that new transatlantic record. And I think they had an extra day after that. They scheduled an extra day to, you know, basically track all the covers. So, you know, yeah, I wasn't there when Mike tracked, but basically it was one of those things where there wasn't a lot of time to get it done. Mike didn't have a lot of time to learn songs. So we had to stick to stuff that he could pick up pretty quick or that he already knew pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, just threw the original track in there and he just played along to that. You know, that's happened. That the US track is exactly that. You know, if you look at the stem tracks, one of them is the album cut. And that's the only click.
Were there any songs that you like kind of really wanted to fight for but didn't end up on the
Oh, always. There's always those. But getting Neal to want to sing them is usually the problem.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or Mike's like, oh, it's been covered a lot.
Yeah.
You know, if it's been done a lot, he won't do it. Or if he okay, like Mike and I have been trying to get Neal to do Green Eyed Lady every time. But Neal thinks the lyrics are so silly, he just doesn't want to do it. So,
well, he could change them, like Can't Find My Way Home.
nah, nobody really wants. You know, he did a good job on that one because I think it's easy to not really get that he changed him that much.
Yeah.
It's just like such a diehard fan of that album or whatever, and you know it by heart.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, most cases it all sounded pretty natural. Didn't sound like, you know, he contrived it to sound like something else. I can't stand when, you know, bands take a classic song and just change a few lyrics because they don't like them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, it's not for me. Yeah.
So
it's fun.
When Neal transitioned into, I mean, he still does solo albums, obviously, but when he came up with the idea of the Neal Morse Band and he wanted to put a band together, how has that changed for you in terms of the way you go about working on these albums with him?
Well, I think the biggest change that I mean, the first time we did it was the Grand Experiment, and he didn't bring anything written in to the sessions. I think the idea is to come together and collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the material came from all of us sitting down and throwing out ideas and basically sewing them together bit by bit. Just trying to build a song and deciding that we like where it's going. And we've gotten that down to a science, so we can blow through that process pretty quickly. But then you go back and decide, oh, this isn't really working that well, or let's try change this up. And I suspect that no matter, you know, what stage we're in, there's always something that somebody's going to say, oh, I think this should have gone around one more time, or I think this goes on too long, or I think this needs this or needs that. And so there's some post editing that goes on to accommodate, you know, little changes when those kind of things happen. They happened quite a bit with both Similitude and quite a bit with the Great Adventure.
Mhm.
But I think the idea being that, you know, the writing isn't just Neal sitting down and kind of writing the thing lock, stock, and barrel like he did with Solo Gradio. That's more like Question Mark or Solo Scriptura, where he had pretty much had a completely fleshed out album that he sent to us before we actually went and tracked. Of course, once Mike got there, we'd make, you know, editorial decisions and, you know, fine tune it. Like the one album when we did that, the creation would have started like right at the vocal verse. So all that stuff that's on it, we wrote in the room. You know, some of it was ideas I brought in, and some of it was something Neal came up with, and then yeah. So there's bits and pieces that get added, you know, or changed around a little bit. You know, Mike says, you know, all this it feels to me like should be at the end, and this doesn't feel like it belongs right here in the album, you know, that kind of thing. And so it's a little bit of cutting it up, moving it around. When it's Neal's, that's all when it's, you know, a whole Neal song. When we do the Neal Morse Band, we just sort of do that on the fly as a group. Same thing. You know, what are we going to do here now? Let's, you know, maybe we can use Bill's chorus, you know, give names to all the little segments of music people bring in.
Yeah.
You know, and what about if, you know, this, and pull it off the whiteboard, you know, saying, you know, why don't we try this here? Maybe that'll work. And then if there's nothing sitting on somebody's ideas or demos, then we'll just make it up as we go and write it on the spot. And we wrote a lot of this new album in the room, you know, despite having some bits and pieces to work with and, you know, help, you know, put some structure in place. There still had to be a lot of things that were written in the room and as we went.
I caught the show in Orlando on the Great Adventure tour.
Mm-hmm.
Are you surprised at how much touring that you guys have done with these albums?
Yeah, I guess I am. I guess I'm surprised that Neal went for it. I think if he'd had time to really think about what we were putting together while we were doing it, he might have tried to do things a little differently. But like, oh, you know, it's all said and done. He's like, man, this is really long. You know, it's like, well, this is the wrong time to bring that up. You know, so yeah, I am surprised that we were able to do so much. But you know, we have a good agent on board, and we have a good agency on board that, you know, has the contacts. Then you can put something together that'll work remotely.
It's good. The last two albums obviously were very conceptual. Was this the new one? Is this conceptual at all?
No, this is not like a continuation of any of that.
Right.
This is a standalone album, and I don't know what it's about yet. We've only got sparse bits and pieces of actual lyrics in place. Everything else is yada yada da doo 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 doo, you know, vocal murmurings that mimic words but don't actually say anything.
Right.
That's just Neal's way of sort of, Neal and Bill or whoever's writing. That's just how they sort of determine that they can work with it vocally. It's a good key. I can find the melody. I like it. This all's working together, whatever. But yeah, you have to put some vocals in place so you have an idea first that you can sing it, that it will work with vocals, and secondly, just because you want to remember maybe what you did, because sometimes you do something off the fly, we'll have to stop and we record all the stuff that comes out of the board. I know we don't run the recorder. We only run the recorder when we've worked out a section we want to put in place, and we'll play through it a couple of times and see how it sits in the big thing. But prior to that, we'll constantly be going, throwing out ideas. We have a Zoom recorder that's capturing all of the audio basically all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be like, oh, I have to get that and pull the audio off it and go back and find that moment. Say, what did he do there? You know, that was so cool. There was something he did because he off the cuff, but it was really cool. And then, you know, 3 seconds later, you can't remember what it is. And
yeah,
So it's nice to be able to go back and hear what you did and say, yeah, okay, that's cool. I like that. And then that's another piece you end up putting in place. But it's sort of just an ongoing process of that nature until you're sure you have it. And then so, you're just building it by everybody playing together in sections. Might not be exactly what you're going to end up playing, but it needs to be something that Mike can track to, so that when we're all said and done with all the writing, he'll go back and track actual drum parts. But sometimes he'll keep the pieces that we did originally, the scratch pieces. He'll keep his drums in a lot of that because he liked what he did and it worked. And everything still sounds exactly the same. So there's not really any difference, at least where the drums are concerned. So it's pretty seamless. And then we'll get all the stems and go home, and everybody will basically start over with the music and doing their own parts. And then we'll actually hear what it sounds like at some point once some of the mixes start coming together. I mean, we really don't. A lot of times I'm tracking in a vacuum. I don't really know what it's going to sound like. I just know what we scratched out, and so I play along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Just as long as it's not going to change, I know what I'm gonna, I can do what I'm going to do. But there's always a certain amount of going back. Once everybody's got their stuff in place, you have to go back and look at it and say, well, that bass bit doesn't really work anymore now because of the way they developed their keyboards or what the guitar started doing there or something. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I'm clashing with other parts that weren't there when I recorded it. And so then there's a period to go back and just fixing and, revamping little bits and just making sure everything still works together now that you're hearing everybody else's parts. And of course, at that point, we're just sending tracks to Rich, and he's slowly getting all the tracks and throwing them in and pulling them up and starting to rough up the mixes. So, because we'll send him the drums first, and he'll start roughing those up while we're finishing. Mm-hmm. And right up to the last minute, oh, by the way, Rich, I sent you a new vocal track for that one part. So, last minute stuff, and he's trying to get a final master. And, we got to change that vocal part. I sent you a new track. But it's a process that'll go on now for a few months.
You really can see that when you watch these making of videos that Neal does and that Mike did with Dream Theater, about how inspiration can just come to them at the last second, and they'll come up with a new idea and they'll want to get that incorporated. So I can totally picture what you're saying.
Right.
How long were you guys in the studio for these sessions?
Well, this last session, yeah, I don't know, 7-8 days. Okay. Something like that. Well, about 8 days, and then Eric and I left. Bill stayed an extra day. And of course, we get home, and then the next day we get the typical email. Here's what happened after you left. It's like, now there's a couple more songs. We're talking about maybe we could do it this way as far as what kind of album it is. Not so much conceptually, just how it's going to be laid out. And, do we have too much for one CD? Do we have enough for two? Is it, it's always a bunch of guesswork at first. And again, we don't really know until we sit and retrack everything and get everything the way we want it and start actually listening back to what we have. And we make those decisions. Which songs are the album? What's the album in all of this?
Right.
Is there something that just doesn't quite sit with the rest of the songs? So it's an objective thing you have to just go through and figure out.
Is there a time frame for the next step of the album process for you guys?
Well, Mike's finished tracking his drums, I'm sure by now, and gone home. So Jerry will basically be making stems and sending them out. and we load them up at home and start tracking. So yeah, it's just as much as anybody can work on it, they do, and try to get it to a point where, you know, people have their stuff done and start making, you know, Bill and Neal, and they'll start the lyric writing process. So even once we get like the music tracked and start really pulling the stuff together, there's still a whole lyric writing process, which is a whole nother thing. So anything can happen at this point.
Mm-hmm. What would you estimate to be like a potential release date for something like this, based on where you are
I
now?
think potentially, you know, maybe August or September wouldn't be unrealistic. That wouldn't be undoable. It just depends on how long it takes us to get it all together and write the lyrics, get it all recorded, and get it mixed.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, with the exception of the Great Adventure, which for various reasons took longer, you know, 3 months, three and a half months of just, you know, recording the parts and writing the lyrics, sorting out all the vocals, and getting mixes to Rich.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you do some of this at home? Do you all go back to Neal's? How does this work?
No, we all do it from home.
Okay. What can fans sort of expect from the new one? Is there, you know, is there anything?
I think the idea was to do songs, standalone songs. So there's no running concept. We're not writing to a storyline, and we wrote that way. So that's probably what it's going to end up being. That being said, yeah, there's probably a couple poppy type songs on there that are shorter, but there's lots of proggier songs. There's probably a 30-minute epic. I'm guessing something around that time frame. The usual, you know, some of the songs will sit in the 7 to 12 minute range, maybe, you know, maybe there's some in between, like 18 or 20, you know. That's the idea, is to have some nice big chunks that aren't all, you know, 30-minute epics, but proggy enough to be 10, 12 minutes or 18 minutes or even 6 or 7 minutes, and still be good songs and still be interesting. So, I mean, I think that was sort of our thought process going into this.
Is it ever difficult to wrap your head around something that Neal wants to do when it's like one of his maybe more complex things, like one of his gentle giant moments or something?
It's just a matter of learning the part.
Yeah.
Or if, you know, he wants to write something like that, there will be, you know, if he has something that he's put together already of that nature, yeah, you know, I don't think that it's hard. It's just a matter of learning the part, but a lot of that stuff will also, you know, go through changes. You'll have Bill or Eric both try stuff and sort of just flip vocals around until we find the right blend. Who should be doing the melody here? Who's going to sound better doing the melody? And they'll all try it and figure out who's got the better sounding voice and that works in the part better. And then the other guys will record parts around that. But a lot of times, yeah, we'll track a song and Bill will sing it, Eric will sing it, Neal will sing it.
Yeah.
They'll choose from one of those as to what it's actually going to be. So, yeah.
What was the Morse Fest? What was that like this year with everything that's been going on?
Well, Morse Fest was great. Oddly enough, despite the fact that there wasn't a ton of people there, it still had the same vibe. Everybody there running the thing is still pretty much the same as any Morse Fest. The audience was considerably smaller since it was limited seating, and in a lot of ways that was very nice because we could spend more time with them, you know, intimately and not, you know, you're not quite worry about the formalities of the way we used to have to do it, you know,
Right.
where there's this long meet and greet or whatever. Um, we were still able to do all the same things, and we took every precaution. Take cardboard heads in the seats, which oddly enough actually worked. Yeah, because it looked like more people in the audience than there really was. It psychologically worked. Um, but you know, it was different in the production line because you have the guy in the house and the light guy and the camera guys. And then you have video control, which captures the video. There's the audio, there's Jerry on the other side of the wall capturing the audio and mixing it on the fly. So he's actually having to do the mix on the fly
Oh,
and sends the mix over the wall to the waterfalls who had set up some amazing streaming technology to stream the thing.
mhm.
And it was an amazing process for those guys. The technical side of it was quite amazing. All the different steps that they all had to go through, and it had to all just happen on the fly. There wasn't like you could just sit there and take your time to, you know, to massage things. You know, you just have to throw and go. What you
Yeah.
get is what you get. So that was interesting. Otherwise, the rest of it was great. We had a great time. The covers night was a lot of fun. I think that was necessary because it was just fun playing Chicago with real horns, things like that. Just
Yeah.
an absolute blast. And
Mhm.
then, you know, the Solo Gradia night, you know, it was nice to play the Three Thoughts. We've been talking about doing that for a while. So it was nice to actually do it. And then a segment of Sola Scriptura, just because it ties in with Solo Gradia. And then all of Solo Gradia was the final. You know, you don't have encores. It's most of it's a streaming thing. So when it's over, it's over.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, encores are really for a live audience. And the audience was there was great, but you know, it's just a little different in that way. But the vibe was good. It was safe. Nobody got sick from that. It
Good.
was great. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I know before we wrap up here, just curious. I know it's all dependent on what's going on in the world, but is there a plan? Have you already talked about touring this fourth Neal Morse Band record?
Well, you know, it's a given that we would want to tour it, but you know, we're that part of the world is going to have to get up and running again. Promoters are going to have to regain their confidence in audience turnout. That's going to be the biggest thing to turn around. Is that promoters, they're not going to want to make you the guarantees they used to make you because they know what they're going to be. They don't know what to expect going forward. And so that makes it almost impossible to do anything because we're already, you know, it's not hugely lucrative. It wasn't hugely lucrative as it was. You know, the band makes money touring, but you know, if all the promoters decided they were only going to pay half of what they did pay before, um, we wouldn't be able to undertake a tour with that. But then again, if we have to, we may do some select dates in strategic places, maybe like a couple nights in on the West Coast, a couple nights in Chicago, a couple nights on the East Coast, kind of thing. Do like a half a dozen shows. You know, people want to come, they come. But you have to do it in a certain manner that you're not going to go broke.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to pay the bills when you're touring. You've got, you know, you need every one of those guarantees, and you need the breaks too. You need the
Sure.
place to sell out, so you get the bonuses and the bumps, and you need all that. You need all that to pay for buses and crews, and none of that stuff comes cheaply. And so for touring bands in general, it's promoter confidence that has to come back. The guys that were putting their money up to do these shows everywhere you go.
Right.
They're the guys that have to be confident that there's going to be a turnout and that it's going to be profitable, paying the bands what the bands need to get paid. So
Sure.
it's yours as good as mine as to how that's going to shake out and what that's going to look like. I think eventually, once everybody gets vaccinated, I think it'll start to come back just fine. But it still may be another year or so. I don't really know.
All right. Well, keep Orlando in your thoughts when you guys are making those plans. I'm just saying, from a selfish standpoint.
No.
I had never seen a show in that venue. I was surprised to see that's where you guys were playing, but it worked.
We tried for the Plaza.
Yeah, that's
and,
the place.
And touring is tough because once you have a tour set up, you realize we need this date in this city. This date, this city, there's no other option.
Mm-hmm.
And the Plaza, we were like number 8. And two of the bands ahead of us were guaranteed sellouts already.
Yeah.
So, there was just no chance we were ever going to get it.
Yeah. Well, that happens too with that Cruise to the Edge, is bands want to play in Orlando that next night when they come in. And so that happens a lot too, where I think Marillion did that. I think Marillion played the Plaza.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we did when we played in Orlando. So we came off the cruise and did that. And that's probably why it sold out. But we took it because it was the only venue available. They were willing to make an offer. And when you're on a bus with a big crew, one night where you don't have a show, you're either going to make enough money to offset your costs for the day, or you're just going to be paying those costs out of your pocket.
Yeah.
So if you can have a show, and it may not be the most optimum circumstances, sometimes you just have to do it. It's just the only way to financially keep things in balance. So
yeah,
there's a few shows along the way like that. Otherwise, Lawrence, Kansas is not a stop we'd really try to make. But we did get a date. It was worth seeing what it was like there for the market. It was either that or, pay the day off expenses. You still got to pay for the bus, but the bus doesn't care whether you're playing or not.
Yeah.
There's a daily cost for the bus. There's daily cost for your crew. So, and on day off, you incur probably hotel costs because you got to put everybody in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a show, you don't have to worry about that. So, it's just the only way to make it work sometimes. But I like to think that Orlando is a good market for us, and I'd like to think we could come back and do a show there, even if it's not after the cruise. That's what I really hope we could do.
Yeah, well, it's been there are not a lot of prog shows here, but the ones that are here are usually pretty well attended. I know Stephen Wilson comes and Porcupine Tree before he went solo, and I thought the Marillion turnout was really good here. You guys weren't in a big place, but the place was full, so I think it does pretty well. But I really appreciate, Randy, your time, and I know you're busy. You got a lot going on. I hope you stay safe. I hope that you guys get everything you want out of this record, and I really appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you.